File 771 Subject Zuckerberg Mark. The anatomy of exile begins not with a public fall, but with a private fortress on the island of Kauai. Beneath the volcanic soil and tourist smiles lies a concrete heart, a bunker complex. Its cost is estimated at over $270 million. This is not a home. It is a monument to fear. The architect of global connection builds a tomb to escape the very world he wired together. His wealth, once a lubricant for social friction, has hardened into a blast wall. Every dollar spent on this subterranean kingdom is a confession that the network he built to unite humanity has instead birthed a threat so profound, its creator must retreat into the earth. The irony is suffocating. He gave the world a digital town square and built himself a panic room. This sprawling estate purchased over ancestral lands is the first exhibit in his posthumous audit. It proves that the ultimate goal was never connection. It was control. And when control over 8 billion people fails, you settle for absolute control over a few thousand square feet of reinforced concrete. This is the shadow of the bunker, a place where a digital god goes to contemplate his magnificent and deeply lonely failure. Market entry. The price, the development of bespoke censorship tools, and the calculated weakening of privacy for users in Paws, Hong Kong. Zuckerberg was allegedly aware of all national security risks. He saw them. He weighed them against market share, and he made his choice. This was the pivotal moment, the point where the code of ethics was officially rewritten for profit. Each decision, a nail hammered into the lid of his own legacy. The fall had begun, and the sound was like coins dropping into a well. The courtship of China. Zuckerberg did not delegate this. He personally oversaw the project, a clandestine effort to breach the Great Firewall. The price of entry was simple, a small piece of Meta's soul. The documents alleged the development of sophisticated censorship tools, algorithms designed to placate a regime that feeds on silence. His creation, once a tool for connection, was being reforged into a weapon of control. The irony was thick enough to taste like rust in stale air. But the true inventory of sins was buried deeper in the report. A specific concession was considered, a digital betrayal aimed at a single city. The engineers were tasked with exploring the possibility of weakening privacy protections for users in Hong Kong. National security risks were not just ignored, they were itemized, assessed, and deemed an acceptable cost of business. The empire had to grow, even if it meant building its new wing on a foundation of broken promises and silenced voices. The deal never materialized, but the blueprint for it exists, a bitter testament to how far a king will go to conquer a new continent. The rot started from within. It always does. In the glass towers of Meta, a civil war was brewing in the language of code and algorithms. The crown jewel, the Llama 4 AI, was meant to be Zuckerberg's final victory, his legacy cast in silicon. Instead, it became the centerpiece of a quiet mutiny. Yann LeCun, the chief AI scientist, the high priest of the new faith, walked away. His exit was not a retirement. It was a verdict. He alleged the performance benchmarks were a mirage. The numbers were fudged. The machine's intelligence was a ghost, a carefully constructed illusion to impress markets and crush rivals. The revelation sent a shockwave through the generative AI team, and confidence in the project evaporated like rain on hot asphalt. A talent exodus followed. The architects of the future were abandoning the empire. Yet Zuckerberg doubled down. He poured billions into acquisitions, buying companies like Scale AI and Monos, trying to purchase the dominance he could not build. His desperation had the metallic smell of fear. And while he projected strength, his personal finances told a different story. A quiet, methodical liquidation. Report after report detailed the consistent sale of Metastock, a river of cash flowing out of the company and into his private accounts. Over $12 billion. It wasn't profit-taking, it was an escape plan. The captain, it seemed, was ensuring his own lifeboat was ready long before ordering the passengers to brace for impact. The anatomy of a fall often begins with a foundation laid on compromised ground. In Louisiana, the air is thick with humidity and history. Here, Meta promised a new cathedral of data, a server farm that would bring jobs and the gloss of progress. The deal smelled of swamp water and cheap ambition, but the concrete had barely cured before the questions began. A motion filed in January 2026 called for an inventory of sins. It alleged that Meta had misled the state's Public Service Commission, a quiet deception about the project's true financing and scale. It was a classic maneuver. Dangle the future in front of desperate men. Make them believe they are partners in a grand enterprise. Then rewrite the terms in the fine print. The data center was meant to be a monument to expansion. Instead, it became evidence. Exhibit A, in a case about an empire built not on innovation, but on the art of the advantageous lie. The hum of the servers was no longer the sound of progress. Pause. It was the sound of a clock ticking down to a verdict. Mark Zuckerberg was systematically liquidating his position. He was cashing out. Over $12 billion in Meta stock sold, a river of capital diverted from his own creation into the safety of a personal vault. This was not the confident reinvestment of a visionary. This was a fire sale disguised as portfolio management. The timing was no coincidence. It was a confession. With the AI division in a state of civil war and whistleblowers mapping the geography of his ethical compromises, the stock sales were a vote of no confidence from the one man who was supposed to believe. Each transaction was a quiet admission that the ship was taking on water. He built the digital world that consumed a generation. And now he was taking his winnings and heading for the door before the final bill came due. The public saw a billionaire. The dossier saw a man building a golden parachute, preparing for the inevitable impact. He was abandoning the wreckage of his own empire. The final inventory of sins is not written on paper. It is etched in the reinforced concrete of a Kauai bunker. This is the epilogue, the posthumous audit of a legacy built on sand and silicon. The fortress was never about surviving a nuclear winter or a peasant uprising. It was an architectural confession, a monument to a man attempting to build an escape hatch from his own creation. He sought to outrun the ghosts of the network, the digital specters of a billion fractured realities he had unleashed. He failed. The ghosts were already inside. The $12 billion liquidated from Metastock were not a war chest for a new conquest. It was a severance package, a golden parachute from an empire whose foundations were showing cracks visible from space. The sound of those stock sales was not the roar of a titan preparing for the next battle. It was the quiet, methodical click of a man locking the door to his own mausoleum. He was cashing out his chips from a game he had already lost. The kingdom was in open revolt. The verdict on truth had been passed when he dismantled the fact-checkers, replacing them with the digital mob rule of community notes. A controlled demolition of objective reality. The AI prophets, men like Jan LeCun, were exiled for speaking heresy against the flawed God in the machine, Llama 4. The court was left with sycophants and flawed oracles. What is a king without his council? Just a man in a large empty room. And the rooms don't get larger or emptier than this. The Pacific Ocean whispers outside the blast-proof walls, a constant reminder of a world he can see, but no longer touch. Inside, the only sound is the sterile hum of air filtration systems, scrubbing the atmosphere clean of humanity. This is the anatomy of his fall. A trajectory that ends not with a bang, but with the profound, deafening silence of absolute isolation. He built a global village and became the sole resident of its loneliest outpost. The final cruel irony is that the man who designed the world's greatest connection machine has engineered his own disconnection. The network is complete, the connections infinite. But the founder, Pause, is permanently offline,